Valley Talk on News Talk 1580 KGAL.
Hey, this is Valley Talk, and a very good day to you. I'm Dave Adams. Glad to have you with us today. It is Wednesday, the 5th of December, and glad to have you along. We've got a couple of items that we're going to be talking about on the program today. First of all, Tom Cordier is in our studios. Tom, thank you for coming to be on the guest on Valley Talk today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And Tom wanted to come on the show because he doesn't agree with some of the comments that were made in an earlier version of Valley Talk, and some comments made by the mayor, some comments made by me. And we're going to be talking about the initiatives that voters are going to be facing in March about urban renewal districts. We'll be talking about those, specifically about Tom's position, what was said before, what my meaning is, and we'll be talking about this issue. It is the policy of KGAL Radio and my personal belief that we air both sides of the issue. And when Tom called me and said that he didn't feel that he was getting adequate exposure on his side of the argument, then I offered him a chance to come on the show, and we can talk about what was said and what his position is on these issues. Hasso Herring is with us in the studio as well. Now, the very last part of the show, we're going to be talking, we're going to lighten it up quite a bit and talk about a Salem performance this Saturday. It's Yuletide with the Pops, featuring vocalist Julie Hittner-Young. And we'll have a representative here in the studio in the last 15-20 minutes of the show to talk about the Salem Pops performance. It's a non-profit, all-volunteer effort with ages from 18 to 80, celebrating the holidays and having a good time. So we're going to be having pretty, I don't call it intense dialogue, but we're going to be definitely having probably a difference of opinion here in a minute. And then we're going to lighten it up at the end of the show, talking about Salem's Pops. We do want to thank Quiznos in Albany for being a sponsor of Valley Talk, and would invite you to submit your entry to get a $10 gift certificate. We're going to be giving that away at the end of the show. Simply email dave@kgal.com or call the station at 926-KGAL or 451-KGAL. That's 926-KGAL or 451-KGAL. And again, my email is dave@kgal.com. It's been the goal of Valley Talk since I've taken over here about at least the show, in the last 8 months or so. If the community is talking about it, we want to talk about it. And this is an issue that the community, if they're not talking about, needs to talk about, because voters are going to be facing it in March. So we're going to have some discussion about that this morning on the show. Two things we're giving away: the Quiznos Taste on Us $10 certificate. Get your entry in before the end of the show. We'll draw a name out at the end of the show. And we also have 2 more tickets for the Oregon State December 8th Grambling State game. And I have 2 tickets, and they're yours if you are the first entry into our email. Send it to dave@kgal.com. If you are the first entry into this Oregon State ticket giveaway, then the tickets are yours. Oregon State, Grambling State, December 8th. So those are the 2 things we are giving away on Valley Talk today. And by the way, if you have a comment that you want to, we're not taking phone calls during this first half of the show, but if you want to be involved in the dialogue, you can send me an email. And that email address, which I've already given you, is dave@kgal.com, and we're going to make a concerted effort to make sure the email is refreshed so that we're getting everything as it comes in. In fact, we're doing that right now. So that's how you can be involved in the Valley Talk show today. In the future, we'd like to get it so we can have some phone calls on the air, but we're not quite technically there yet. So that's where the position is of the station and Valley Talk, and having listeners call in and be a part of the show. So, Tom, thank you for being with us on Valley Talk today. You sent me an email, and let's just, first of all, item number 2, let's jump to that. The next election, Sharon Canopa said the election was March 13th. You say it's Tuesday, March 12th. And my statement to you was, it's only a day. You know, she made a mistake in the date. Why is it such a big deal to you?
Well, you'll have to excuse me, Dave, because I've been involved in a very extra legal process where everything has to be absolutely correct or you get stopped. When the measures are written, every capital letter has to be in place, every comma has to be in place, every period has to be in place, every date has to be met. And so the election, to be clear, will be the 12th of March. It's on a Tuesday. The ballots will go out the 22nd of February.
Okay. Another thing that you draw, I made a statement when I was talking to Sharon Canopa about her re-election. And I have the results in front of me now. Sharon Canopa won with 9,335 votes, Charlie Smith with 5,416 votes. Sharon won 52% of the vote, and Charlie Smith won 30% of the vote. My statement to her was just looking at that, the fact that she was returned to office, and essentially she represents current administration, was, Sharon, isn't that a vote of confidence for you as we're looking at these initiative measures coming up? In that if the electorate was extremely unhappy with the finances of the city, why did they return her to office? And that was my statement to you yesterday, Tom. And so that was my thinking when I made that statement. So, and you did not agree with that. So go ahead and tell us what you think of that statement. You drew.
Well, the numbers that you quote, Dave, are Lynn County only. They're the Benton County portion of Albany. Sharon got 2,370 votes, and Charlie Smith got 1,077. Okay, so the rebuttal here against if Canopa hadn't been, since she was reelected, that must mean everybody's in favor of what she's doing. And my answer to that is 3,820 people, Albany registered voters, sat on their hands and didn't vote for anybody. And Charlie Smith did not run a campaign. He put his name in the hat. He had one sign in the city out at Pacific and Queen. I was there when he put it up. He had no intention of winning. He ran no campaign, and yet he garnered 6,000 votes. And the Democrat Herald article says, gee, what does the voters appear to be saying? What they're saying, according to the DH editorial, is that, gee, maybe Canopa's support for Kara isn't a good thing. Charlie Smith got 3 times the number of votes that he ran, that he got last election. He's kind of a perennial guy. And he got a lot more votes this time than he ever did, and he had no campaign.
Well, look, let's, all that stuff about the old campaign seems kind of pointless now. Remember that in the previous election, there were 3 candidates for mayor, and so it's a whole different story. The point here was that if you want to talk about the election, the mayor of Albany, Sharon Canopa, was overwhelmingly reelected without a whole lot of trouble. But that really doesn't. And anytime you have an election, there's somebody you can run Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse is going to get some votes, as you know. This is just always the case. And but what we ought to be talking about is your measures, your initiative proposals that are going to be on the ballot in March. Maybe we ought to just say what they are, to remind people in the city of Albany, who are the only ones who are really affected by this, what these measures do and what they would do.
Okay, let me jump in here real quick. We wanted, Tom made some comments on the email, and so we're airing those comments out. Also is taking us into, let's go in to talk about the measures, which is exactly where we need to go. But I wanted to answer those comments that you made to me on an email. So there we go. Go ahead and answer Hasso's question. What do the initiatives say?
Well, we have 2 measures that will be on the ballot in March. One ballot, the caption reads, a charter amendment requiring voter approval for urban renewal in Albany. And the question that the voters will be asked to answer, yes or no, is shall the charter, the city charter, be amended to require voter approval and voter notification to create or substantially change urban renewal plans. It does not affect the current urban renewal agency called the Albany Revitalization Agency. It talks about if you want to create another one, you can't do what you did in 2001, which was to have the city council on its own create it. You're going to have to come to the voters before you can establish a new urban renewal plan.
And the other measure would do what?
And the other measure is called 22117. And the caption on that measure says charter amendment to limit the city's debt. The question that the voters will be asked to answer yes or no is, shall the Albany City Charter be amended to further limit city debt?
The question about that occurs to me is what sort of debt are we talking about? As you know, obviously, there are certain kinds of debt that already are limited by requiring voter approval, and those are the kinds of debts that you pay off with your property taxes. So what would this do that we don't already have?
Well, currently the city can enter into what is called revenue bonds without ever coming to the voters. General obligation bonds, they must come to the voters.
General obligation bonds are the ones that take property taxes to pay off. Revenue bonds typically do not, obviously, as the name implies.
They get paid by somebody.
Right.
Okay. And the somebody is the taxpayers. And how it gets paid
Well, actually, not the taxpayers. Revenue bonds typically are paid off by revenue paid by other people. They may be the same as the taxpayers, but they may not be taxpayers at all. They are usually, for example, ratepayers.
I pay an exorbitant amount of money every month for water because of revenue bonds.
Right. But that's not a tax. That's a utility bill.
Call it what you want.
Well, I mean,
and that's
you can call it what you want.
That's why my measure says debt.
Okay.
It doesn't define debt because I knew that if I said we're going to limit A debt, category A of debt, then we pass that, and now the city will say, well, we just created debt number B, and so it doesn't apply, or debt number C. So I left it open, all debt. And it will be up to the courts to decide what debt is. As a matter of fact, the other day at a city council meeting, the city finance director was asked the question, how much debt do we have? He said, I don't know, because I don't know what you mean by debt. That's the city finance director.
Well, that may have been a rhetorical answer, but anybody who really wants to know about the city debt can simply look it up.
You have to know what bucket to look at, and one of the buckets is urban renewal.
Well, there are, certain kinds of, all kinds of debt, different kinds of debt.
Yep.
And so, for example, the measure, would it apply, would it allow the city to lease police cars?
Gee, I don't know. That'll be up to the city attorney.
Well, no, that's a fair question. That's debt. And you're saying debt is debt. My question for you, Tom, is this. Do you feel like this is somewhat micromanaging and could very much tie the hands of the city? Let's say unforeseen circumstances come up and the city, if this is passed by voters, will say, we just can't do it and we're going to have to lay off cops because we're tied up by this. I'm not saying that the city needs to willy-nilly spend money, but what would you say to critics of this who say you're very much tying the hands of the city and it could cause a real problem in the future?
I said I answered that question in a letter to the editor fairly recently.
Okay, answer it now.
And the answer is, if this measure, quote, stifles the city, kills the city, they won't be able to function, then perhaps all the leadership ought to resign. Because all you have to do, in my opinion, is to create a plan If you have a plan and you want to go into more debt, then you put it to the voters. It's very simple. This whole notion of, gee, we won't be able to do this, is the sky is falling kind of stuff, and I don't buy it. It's an irrational argument that tries to protect the status quo. When you say micromanaging it,
sure.
Let me tell you, I got that question over and over again with all of the signatures that we collected. And my answer to that is, gee, micromanaging it by putting it in the hands of the voters, if you think that's micromanaging, then you must be okay with the $16 trillion at the federal level. We're getting the voters to have a voice in what debt we want to carry.
Okay, let me correct that statement. I'm not okay with the $16 trillion at the federal level.
Good. Okay. Well, then I wouldn't think you would use the term micromanaging.
You're drawing a conclusion based on my response,
Yep.
which is it's apples and oranges. But Hasso, go ahead.
Well, I guess that brings me to a question about what motivated you to pass or to initiate these measures in the first place. I mean, what is it that got you started?
I don't like the idea of debt. And my sense is, after looking at...
is it okay to have a mortgage?
As long as the property values are increasing. A lot of people went into mortgages and couldn't afford them.
No, I mean,
that wasn't good.
Regardless of property values, do you think it is okay, or is it morally repugnant to borrow money to buy a house?
No, it's not morally repugnant, but it needs to be done wisely.
Okay.
For example, the water treatment plants, my understanding, maybe you can correct me, my understanding is that when the water treatment plant and the sewage treatment plant, the $80 million revenue bonds that we carry, were put into place, the system was sized based on estimates of what population would do over time. We're no longer increasing the number of citizens in the state to that level. Those estimates were entirely wrong, and so we put out bonds based on an assumption, and perhaps we were too generous.
Well, let me. I don't want to correct you necessarily, but I want to. From my recollection,
yeah.
Having covered these things over the years, is a little different, and that is that we're talking about two different big bond issues, revenue bond issues that the city sold.
Yep.
The first one was for between $30 and $40 million, if I recall, for an expansion or for the construction of a new water treatment plant on Scrabble Hill that took money directly out of the Santiam River.
Mm-hmm.
And that was done mostly in order to secure for the long term, for 100 years, 200 years, a source of water on the Santiam River, because it was felt that the canal, the Santiam Canal, that had previously fed, and still does, the water treatment system, would not be sufficient. Mm-hmm. And it was also subject to substantial disruption, interruption,
Sure.
all kinds of problems.
Mm-hmm.
There were some other factors involved at the time because the city of Millersburg had made overtures to secure a water right on the Santiam River that would have precluded, or a water intake spot that would have precluded the city of Albany from ever doing the same thing. And the city had its eye on that spot, needed it for the future. So that was the first item, and the other one had to do with a revenue bond of between. Well, it wasn't a revenue bond; it was a loan from the state revolving loan fund, administered by the DEQ, that the city took out in order to finance the expansion and reconstruction of the sewage treatment plant. That was required largely because increasingly tough standards that the state and the federal government were imposing on water treatment, and also had to do with the expansion of the treatment plant for normal population growth. Now, it turns out that Albany may not be growing as fast as it did, say, in the 60s and 70s, but it certainly is still growing at a substantial clip. It's, as you know, it surpassed 50,000 during the last census, and is still estimated to be growing. So you really can't fault the city administration and the city council for incurring those kinds of long-term expansion projects and finding a way to finance them without burdening the taxpayers. Instead, using the people who use the system to raise the money. Now,
see, you make that distinction again, Hasso, that somehow users aren't taxpayers.
Well, they are usually the same people, but
it all costs money.
But they usually have at least some kind of control over the amount of money that it costs. If you don't want to pay a very high water bill, you can try to conserve water. Yeah, that's all there is to it. I mean, that is better than being.
And we do.
And we do, and there's nothing particularly wrong with that. Now, the water rates are still very high, and they're a burden on people. But they're a burden on people, not only in Albany. Lebanon, for example, has had great issues with the quickly rising water rates, and largely for the same problem. They have to expand their systems that were built 50 to 100 years ago, and that are no longer sufficient and need to be fixed. So that's the story on these utility improvements. The same goes for everything else. When the BPA, the Bonneville Power Administration, has to construct new transmission lines from their plants across the country, they raise the rates that they pay for, and somebody has to pay for these things. It's either the taxpayers or the public generally, or the people who actually use the service.
Didn't the Whoops collapse in Washington set the standard that says no, you can't get the ratepayers to pay for that?
Well, the Whoops thing is a different story.
Well, it all is a little bit different. When you started the discussion about am I philosophically opposed to debt?
Yeah.
The answer is no, if it's done wisely. And one of the comments that we got as we collected the signatures to get these petitions on the ballot was, why didn't the city take the Pepsi money and pay down the debt? Pay down the revenue bonds, reduce my water bill, and that feeling is out there loud and clear.
It is, and the decision was made to not do that entirely. The city did that to a very small extent,
right?
In order to save sewer rates during one particular year. That is to not increase sewer rates during 1 year. But you remember that the Pepsi settlement money also had another purpose, and that was somehow economic development. That was the point.
Yep, right.
And so, I mean, that was the whole project, the whole point of this Pepsi project.
Yep. And that's what
I think the council tried over time to set aside some of that money, at least for that purpose, and not to pay down.
Let's get back to urban renewal.
Okay, before we do that, we're running about 10 minutes behind and taking a break here. So let's take the break, and we'll come right back into this discussion. This is Valley Talk.
We got to go.
'Tis the season and time for planning holiday parties and memorable company celebrations. Be sure to include Mama's Fine Italian in your plans. Have the party at Mama's in Lebanon or book them to cater your event. Either way, it will be superb, and your guests will love it. Need a special bottle of wine for dinner tonight or for a party hostess gift? No better place or price than Mama's Incomparable Wine Shop. Closed Sunday and Monday, so make the most of the other 5 days and join your friends at Mama's. Like them on Facebook or contact them through their website, mamasfineitalian.com. Call for reservations or to plan your holiday party. 541-451-5050. That's 451-5050. Mama's Fine Italian and Wine Shop on West Oak between Main and 2nd in Lebanon, across from the Big Blue Napa Auto Parts building.
The saying home is where the heart is remains as true today as ever. Hi, I'm Jenny Saunders, Director of Nursing with New Horizons In-Home Care. Call us when you or someone you know needs help. We have an excellent team of nurse care managers and professional caregivers providing medical and non-medical services in your home, including housekeeping, meal preparation, bathing and grooming assistance, as well as medication management. Call 541-752-9059. New Horizons In-Home Care. We're there when you need us.
When you look out across the Willamette Valley, you'll see plenty of banking choices. Willamette Community Bank is here to give you an option that's pretty unique. Like no other, in fact, Willamette Community Bank provides an alternative to large national and regional banks by offering customized financial services and local decision-making to benefit local people, local families, and local businesses. How many banks can say that? Willamette Community Bank. Service like no other. We promise. Member FDIC.
Here is a great Christmas gift idea that your loved ones can enjoy all year long. Give them one of those terrific personal calendars. But you better hop to it now. Find a series of snapshots that show your family as it is, as it was, as it will best bring back happy memories and bright anticipation. Take those pictures to More Ink, and just that quick, you'll have that giving problem solved in the most delightful of ways. More Ink in the Carriage House Plaza, Santiam Road in Maine, in Albany.
Thomas Jefferson once said, never put off till tomorrow what you can do today. So get organized now by calling Queen Bee Organizing in Corvallis. Kristen Bertelson of Queen Bee Organizing knows that less clutter equals less stress. Many people struggle with multiple levels of disorganization of their homes and workplaces and often need outside help to put their lives in order. If you're distracted and overwhelmed for the holidays and you need to get organized, then call Queen Bee Organizing now, 541-231-6964, or log on to queenbeeorganizing.com. That's Queen, the letter B, organizing.com.
Less hype, just quality news, sports, and smart talk. From your friends at 1580 KGAL.
This is Valley Talk, KGAL Radio. I'm Dave Adams. Hasso Herring in the studio with us. Tom Cordier is here, and we're talking about initiative measures 22116, 22117. Voters will face March 12th. And one of the things that Tom mentioned in an email he sent to me was in a comment that Mayor Sharon Canopa made, that a supermajority would be required to increase the city debt if these measures pass in March. And Tom, you're pretty passionate in saying you do not agree with that statement.
I do not agree with that statement. It will be a simple majority. The actual language in the act which changes the charter says only with the approval of a majority of Albany city electors in a primary, special, or general election shall Albany be allowed to increase its indebtedness. And that term, majority of Albany city electors, has been intentionally distorted by people who are opposed to this measure to mean a super majority, and it doesn't mean that at all. A majority of the electors means a majority of the people who vote, not who are able to vote, but actually people who vote.
So what you're saying is electors, the people who vote, electorate, are the people that are eligible to vote.
That's correct. And this current city charter, just to be clear here, the current city charter says in order to have a successful annexation by the city of property outside the city, that it can only be done by a majority vote among the electorate.
Well, you recall that annexation measure that is in the city charter also was a result of an initiative. And it seems to me that some of this initiative drafting is pretty sloppy. Why even mention a majority of what? Normally, in an election, it is assumed that the majority governs. No?
Maybe I will be charged again with nitpicking. The current charter only allows an annexation by a majority of the electorate, and Albany has about 25,000 in the body called the electorate, and the city has ignored those words. And so when I was challenged through the Secretary of State's office that I was intentionally misleading people, telling people that it would only be a simple majority. The Secretary of State's office investigated that claim and found it to be without merit and dropped the claim and answered the complaint that way, that it will study that issue no further. And yet the mayor continues to say it's a supermajority will be required in order for the city to increase debt if this measure passes, and it is absolutely not true.
Well, we'll find out what those words mean if it does pass, right?
Yeah. Now, let me just throw this in here, because the term nitpicking was a term that I used to you regards to the March 12th, March 13th, which I thought was nitpicking. The issue we're talking about right now, I don't believe is nitpicking. I think there is a question here is about elector, electorate, the supermajority, simple majority. That's not nitpicking. I think that's a very valid question.
Well, here's the issue, though, Dave. If the city attorney can interpret the current language of the charter that says a majority vote among the electorate, if he can interpret that to mean only a majority, a simple majority, then he will be able to interpret the new language that will get put into the charter as a result of the measure passing. He will be able to interpret that any way he wants.
Well, let me ask you something along a different line, Tom. If this measure passes, how many elections to approve debt are we going to have per year, would you say?
Gee, I don't know. It'll be up to the city. Both of these measures require the city council to be not in the reactive mode anymore, but in the planning mode. People have said, and in fact, it was said on the program that I'm responding to, that the urban renewal, the requirement to go to the voters to get a new urban renewal plan established will somehow thwart economic development. To the contrary, planning. If somebody thinks we've got to develop the property out by the freeway south of town and we've got to have an overpass, then put it in a plan and get it approved by the voters now. Don't wait for a Pepsi 2 company to appeal and then go to the voters. Get the planning done now. So how many times are we going to have to go to the voters to increase that? It depends on what kind of lack of planning is done by the city council.
Well, on the urban renewal, I think what you might see is we'll just try to form, the city might try to form an urban renewal district that encompasses the entire city for economic development and be done with that and so on. Well, it probably can't be done that way because you have to have specific projects in order to have an urban renewal district. But on the debt question, that is really the one that is more interesting and more important.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, how often are we going to have, is the city of Albany going to have to vote on municipal debt issues under your proposal?
I don't know. I'll repeat what I said a minute ago. It is up to the city council to decide how to develop a plan and put it in front of the people. I'm not proposing, we want to rent 13 cop cars, so we'll put it to the voters that we're going to rent 13. I mean, if you want to do it that way, go ahead and do it that way, but that's pretty stupid. You ought to have a plan.
So what do you have in mind? What do you have in mind? How would that work?
You have a plan. This is how much we want to go into debt for this year. Do it once a year.
Okay, let's talk about this. In Sweet Home the other day, this is about a month ago, there was a guy who was drunk in a big Chevy pickup.
Yeah.
And he wrecked 3 of the patrol cars in the city. I don't know how many of the patrol cars Sweet Home has, but that's a lot. So let's say a situation happens, catastrophic, unforeseen, something happens significant to city infrastructure, and all of a sudden we have to rebuild a plant, a police station, we have to replace the entire fleet of police cars for whatever reason happened. I'm not even going to throw any scenarios out there, but let's say something happens unforeseen. So then, okay, we've got to buy 25 new cop cars in Albany. We have to go to the voters, and we can't buy those new patrol cars until we do. That, to me, would cause a problem. What do you think?
I think that's a sky is falling argument.
Tell that to Sweet Home.
I'm not sure that that Albany has 25 cop cars. I don't think we do. They never have to, buy that many. But I think the lack of definition of debt is still kind of a problem because if it means any kind of an obligation, it even means paychecks. I mean, you can't have somebody work for you and without paying them that second or that day or the end of every workday, because you're indebted to that person, and if that is included in your definition of debt, you can see where that would be an administrative nightmare, wouldn't it?
What do you think?
It will be up to the city attorney to determine what is debt. As I said before, I refrained from categorizing debt because the status quo will say, well, we did this kind of debt. We didn't do that kind of debt. So I used the generic term of debt. And
so are you saying then it's up to the city to say, well, look, this isn't debt. We're just going to okay it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what they'll do. That's what they're doing in annexation. That's what they'll do. They'll interpret it to their best interests. That's what government is doing.
I think you got a too jaundiced a view of the city government. The people who are making these decisions, you got to remember, have absolutely no personal stake in this business. They don't enrich themselves.
I understand.
They do not. They serve as volunteers. That's worth remembering from time to time. When you attack the city government, the people who are making the decisions are doing it because they think that's the best they can do.
I understand.
For the community.
And there comes a point when the voters need to step back in and say, wait a minute, guys, you've gone too far. To me, the city fathers and the city manager look at the taxpayers as a ready source of revenue for whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it. And this measure tries to say, wait, put the voters back in a position of being able to say, no, we don't want to do that.
Okay.
Hey, guys, we're issue.
We're running.
Put the voters in control.
Okay, we're running way behind on breaks again. We need to take another break. This is Valley Talk. Be right back.
The Osgood File, sponsored in part by Stamps.com. Save time, trouble, and money by buying and printing official U.S. postage with your own computer and printer. In a moment, a special offer just for you. This is Charles Osgood. In our last broadcast, we were talking about whether it's best to know or not everything the doctors can now tell us about our risk for illness, even fatal illness. Our CBS News colleague Tracy Smith spoke with Dr. Robert Green of Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston.
Green led a study of people who wanted to know if they were at a higher genetic risk for Alzheimer's. It was thought that people who got bad news would, for lack of a better medical term, freak out.
What the study showed after this. With the holidays almost here, you don't have time to go to the post office. Think about the traffic and the parking, and once you get there, it'll be crowded with people mailing their gifts and packages. Well, avoid all the holiday hassle and skip that trip to the post office. Do what I do and use Stamps.com. Buy and print official U.S. postage right from your own desk using your own computer and printer. Print postage for any letter or package the instant you need it, and then the mailman picks it up. I know Stamps.com will make your life easier this time of year because it's made my life easier at the office all year round. Right now, Stamps.com has a special offer since you listen to the Osgood File. It's a no-risk trial with a $110 bonus that includes a digital scale and up to $55 in free postage, but only if you use my last name, Osgood. So go to Stamps.com. First thing you do, click on the radio microphone at the top of the home page and type in Osgood, O-S-G-O-O-D. That's Stamps.com and enter Osgood. Would people, to use Tracy Smith's term, freak out if they were given bad news about their own diagnosis and prognosis? The conventional wisdom was that they might.
But Green and his team found that there were no significant differences between how people handled good news and possibly the worst news of their lives. You found that people who ask for the information usually can handle the information.
That is what we found, yes.
Good or bad?
That's right.
In fact, most people think they can handle it. According to a CBS News poll, 58% of Americans say they would want to know if they carried a gene for an incurable disease.
Even so, Dr. Green told Tracy Smith,
it is very hard to face a moment where you're going to learn for sure that you are going to get this terrible disease. People make their own personal decision. I think either decision is fine, but they're faced with this very, very dramatic moment.
Those moments could soon be happening more often for more people. Americans spent $5 billion on genetic testing in 2010, and that number is expected to quintuple in the next decade.
20 years from now, it would be unthinkable not to have your genome as a resource for your own health. As common as getting your blood pressure taken.
we all live our lives under sentence of death, and we do understand that conception, but it is hard to face. And in our own case, we think maybe they'll make an exception. The Osgood File. Charles Osgood on the CBS Radio Network.
The customs of Christmas. A custom of Christmas has to do with the legends of the Christmas rolls. I'll tell you about it in a moment.
This is Greg Rowe, Executive Director of the United Way of Linn County. For many people, an important custom of Christmas is lending a helping hand to your neighbors and friends in need with a donation to the United Way. At holiday time and year-round, the United Way and its 21 nonprofit partner agencies are helping change lives for the better. Go to our website, unitedwayoflinncounty.org, and discover how you can help change lives. Give, advocate, volunteer. Live united.
A custom of Christmas, the mystery of the forest of Goinge in Sweden. Legend says that years ago there was a Christmas Eve when all the flowers, fruits, and trees bloomed in the forest, and the birds awakened. A sound of bells floated on the night air. Then came Abbot Hans, accompanied by a doubting monk. After seeing these wonders, the monk decided it was the work of the devil. Because of his doubts, the magic forest disappeared. And to this day, no flowers except one can be seen on Christmas Day. The Christmas Rolls has persisted to remind us of this magic garden. Legends of Christmas flowers, another of the customs of Christmas.
The Car Show, Saturday afternoons on News Talk 1580, KGAL.
Hey, this is Valley Talk, KGAL. You know, one of the things I love about live radio is it's live. We do want to mention that the opinions expressed on the show are those of whoever's voice you heard. Whether they're Tom Cordier, Hasso Herring, or myself, Dave Adams, do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of staff and management or ownership of Eads Broadcasting or KGAL Radio. Just wanted to throw that out there so that you don't call Charlie and say, Charlie, why'd you say this? And Charlie will say, I didn't say it. It wasn't his opinion. It's our opinion. That's the cool thing about being in the United States, and the cool thing about broadcasting now and about the show is you have a chance to come on and share your opinions. Hey, we're going to have to wrap this up here real quick. I would love to talk about this for another hour.
How about a closing statement?
Closing statement from you. Tom Cordier.
We want any future urban renewal district to be focused on job creation like the successful urban renewal program that the city of Lebanon has implemented. The best way of ensuring such a focus is to require that any proposal must muster with the voters. Kickbacks to developers with our tax dollars at the same time the city is having to increase our taxes via their public safety levy to maintain services is poor public policy, and we clearly need increased accountability on any future urban renewal district. And this is not an anti-job measure. It will not hinder economic development. In fact, it will cause folks to be proactive and zero in on the priority of job growth. Our city leaders could begin to develop a plan today.
Okay, we have to leave it at there because we're running way behind on the show. Hale Thornburg, the next guest, we're talking about the Salem Pops. Hasso Herring, thank you very much for being in on the show. Very lively discussion.
Glad to be here.
And Tom Cordier, thank you for being with us. I'd love to talk more about it, but the clock on the wall is a terrible taskmaster. We have to run. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Okay, Federal tax-free municipal bonds, corporate bonds, government bonds, what's right for you? Some bonds offer relatively attractive yields, while other bonds offer income that can be federally income tax-free. If you'd like more information about tax-free bonds, see Leo Smith, your local Edward Jones financial advisor at 56 East Airport in Lebanon. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Have you given up trying to lose weight? If it seems like nothing delivers on its promises or works for the long term, look to Family Chiropractic Wellness Center. Family Chiropractic Wellness Center at 541 Park Street in Lebanon can change your mind and change your life. Attend a free workshop and learn about a comprehensive weight management program that has been recommended by over 20,000 doctors since 1980. The program includes the free guidance of a caring health coach, online support, and a network of like-minded individuals. You'll soon be on your way to reaching your goal weight and learning how to maintain it. Call Dr. Ron Clifton's office right now at 541-451-1290 to get started. Reserve your free admission to one of the workshops by visiting Family Chiropractic Wellness Center at 541 Park Street. Just look for the time and temperature sign or call 451-1290. Call now, 451-1290. The Family Chiropractic Wellness Center. Chiropractic, a natural way to grow. Call 541-451-1290.
Gas is so expensive. It's unbelievable. It's like $100 gazillion. Mom says she's had it. My dad got gas. He said a bad word. I told him he could borrow my bike. He said he's gonna get something fuel efficient instead.
Finding the right deal is child's play at Premising Motors. Since 1969, when we opened our doors, we treated people differently, and that's why we help our community and the environment by offering over 10 new GM vehicles that get more than 30 miles per gallon. Just another way to say you're part of the family.
This is an astounding story of courage and endurance, unparalleled in the history of shipwrecks.
Now showing at Carmike 12.
No! Go away!
Based on the beloved bestseller, Two Unlikely Castaways.
You have to trust me.
One incredible journey home. From Academy Award-winning director Ang Lee, Life of Pi.
Now showing at Carmike 12.
In 3D.
The United States has been invaded. What am I supposed to do?
I'm gonna fight.
Now showing at Carmike 12. Red Dawn.
When you're fighting in your own backyard, you're fighting for your family. For them, this is just some place. For us, this is our home.
Now showing at Carmike 12.
Red Dawn. Rated PG-13.
Into the woods and onto the waters. Listen to Northwestern Outdoors, Saturday nights on Smart Talk 1580.
Hey, this is Valley Talk. We're going to light things up a lot. In fact, this Saturday, Yuletide with the Pops, featuring vocalist Julie Hittner-Young, going to be in Salem. And in the studios today, Hale Thornburg. Hale, thank you for being with us on the show today. Sorry we ran long on the previous segment. Tell us what, where, when is the concert, what it's going to be all about.
Okay, well, to kind of steal from Monty Python, now for something completely different.
There you go.
The Salem Pops Orchestra, obviously, is in Salem, Oregon, but we cover the entire Mid-Willamette Valley as far as an audience and participants in the orchestra. And this Saturday, December 8th, 7:30 p.m. in Salem's historic Elsinore Theater, we are presenting our annual Christmas concert, which is titled, appropriately, Yuletide with the Pops. The organization itself presents 4 concerts every year, and they all have different themes except for Christmas. When Christmas comes around, people want to hear Christmas music. So that's what we're doing. The concert is going to be, like I say, it's 7:30 at the Elsinore Theater, and we have a program that's going to feature a bunch of numbers by the orchestra and some terrific numbers by our guest, Julie Hittner-Young, and I'll tell you a little bit about her in a minute. But first, let me give you what we're going to talk about, what we're going to be playing as an orchestra. We're going to start with probably the ultimate Christmas milieu, the whole gamut of Christmas carols, called A Christmas Festival by Leroy Anderson. From 1950, he put together 7 or 8 Christmas carols that if you listen to it once or twice a day, it will satisfy your Christmas carol quotient for the week. It's a terrific number that, if you've been to the mall, you've heard it. Now, if you hear us play it, you won't have to go to the mall. You can just think back to all of those carols.
There you go.
Then we're going to be doing a Charlie Brown Christmas. This may be my favorite.
That is classic Christmas.
It's classic Christmas from the 1960s, and it features those great melodies that Vince Guaraldi and Lee Mendelson came up with way back then. that, you'll recognize them. Christmas is coming. Christmas is here. Their skating theme, the Linus and Lucy theme, that just one of the great jazz pieces of our time. If you can't whistle and snap your fingers after listening to that, you just need some kind of stimulant. It's as simple as that.
Doing it already.
All right, I can hear it.
There you go.
Anyway, for a change of pace, we're going to do Santa's Classical Christmas, which we take some familiar Christmas tunes and put them into a classical mood. We combine some of the great classical music from Beethoven and Handel, and suddenly they evolve into Christmas carols. It's really terrific. It's a lot of fun. We're also going to do the Polar Express from 2004, that great flick with some great music that'll go on. We're also going to do a piece called the Radetzky March. Now, that evolved back in 1848. Johann Strauss Sr. recognized a great victory by a General Joseph Radetzky von Radetz. And he wrote this march for him, that when he played it in 1848, the whole audience, which was made up primarily of soldiers, got up and clapped in time to the music. That became a tradition. So now in Vienna, every year at New Year's, they'll play the Radetzky March, and the audience traditionally claps along with it. Larry Harrington, our director, will actually turn around and conduct the audience, make sure that they clap in time.
Some people like me need help with that.
That's right.
Okay.
If you follow the baton and the people around you, you'll be able to do it.
Okay, good.
Unlike Steve Martin in The Jerk, who was completely unable to follow the beat. He could listen to a Sousa march and be out of step.
Yeah.
I mean,
a great classic movie. I've got rhythm!
So he built them a bigger house.
There you go. Great movie.
We're going to do one of the classics of all time that everybody has heard. It's called Sleigh Ride, again by Leroy Anderson. And I think of it as a concerto for whip crack, accompanied by either a band or an orchestra. I say that because I get to play whip crack in that dum-dum-digga-doo, dum-dum-digga-doo-doo. So, anyway.
Sounds like fun.
Change of pace will be Vaughan Williams' Christmas, some English tunes that are put in the style of Ralph Vaughan Williams. And, of course, Christmas favorites. That's a piece by an arrangement by Bruce Chase that it will be some of our favorite carols. Plus, a tune from Meet Me in St. Louis, 1944, with the,
a lot of classic music in this.
It is
very enjoyable.
And we're going to be finishing the program with a combination of John Philip Sousa and Jingle Bells. It's called Jingle Bells Forever, a takeoff on the Stars and Stripes Forever, interlacing Jingle Bells into it.
This sounds like a fantastic event.
It is. It's a fun time, and that's why we're doing it. Now, let me tell you about Julie.
We've actually got 45 seconds. Is there a cost for this? And give me the time and date again, please.
Okay, it is going to be Saturday, 7:30 p.m. at the historic Elsinore Theater, and that's in downtown Salem. $15 for general admission, $18 for reserved mezzanine, $5 for students getting in. Kids under 12 are free.
Where do they buy tickets?
They buy tickets either at the Elsinore Theater, by phone at 1-800-992-8499, or at the door. But you gotta hear our singer, Julie Hittner-Young. She is a superb singer, delivers a song that'll just melt your heart, has a voice that will carry you to a wonderful feeling of Christmas mellowness.
Valley Talk, check us out, the replay on our website, KGAL.com.
Serving the Mid-Valley for over 50 years. You're listening to News Talk 1580, KGAL, Lebanon, Albany, Corvallis.